Hi, everybody. Let's see. Let me see. Just going to try to little switchy through things, hoping that you all see me. I see it in Facebook Live, the universe. So I'm going to try something. You see the NWI blank screen or screen with the NWI on it, and I might be in the corner. I apologize for that. I think this is kind of perfect for the talk today. It is wellness and belonging. And really, in the cyber world, we there's all sorts of unannounced steps as sometimes with every day that goes by. And sometimes that is sort of the rhythm of belonging to any movement or any new choice in life, or maybe an old choice, maybe picking back up that for whatever reason, for a lifestyle, or maybe even your level of cultural and involvement, or maybe you're going back to a career. There is always some process. There's some always rite of passage, or really just kind of like the tempo of making a choice. So, um, and that's how technology is right now. Technology has it's like a shadow world. We deal with access, who is present, who is seen, how we behave. And so when I was thinking about this, what I was going to share today, I wanted to basically start from the basics, that when we our destiny becomes to be a human being on earth, one of the first things that happens to us, before we arrive in the world, is we can respond to sound. And I think that then hearing, because as we're arriving and the body is developing, before you arrive from your mother, um, there is a process of, like, that first connection is hearing. And sometimes hearing is also understanding that there's silences and sort of like the tempo of belonging. Maybe you'll have those critical moments where you want direction, or you are at a point, maybe a crossroads. Maybe you're offered a life choice that might remove you from your community for a while, or physically, or even you've decided, for whatever reason, to spend this hour here with on the Native Wellness Institute Power Hour, which itself has its own tempo. Over Since March 2020, when it began, there has been a frequency, sort of a different rhythm. It's kind of like the downbeat in a traditional song, an indigenous song or a powwow song, where there is the the beat of the drum slows down, and then there is that fast upswing. So hearing and spending some time sharpening those skills. And for people that maybe their hearing changes their lifetime, or maybe there's somebody in your family that their hearing was impacted by their life choices. Maybe they had to work around heavy machinery before there was even ear protection was like a thing. Or maybe they served in the military. Maybe they're an avid hunter, and over time, those percussion sounds really play havoc. And then now I have my ear pods somewhere around here, and I have earphones. So when the technology or the choices made to change your hearing and that sound and that reverberation, like the vibrations throughout your body of what you're listening to, um, what is in your environment. Um, I one time was with a child that there was a period in Indian country where children's hearing became affected by simple untreated conditions, childhood conditions, maybe an earache that went bad. There were a lot of home remedies. And as things started to change in our environment, where there was kind of uh, a space between our continued relationship with the earth medicines, where there were many remedies that were known before. And we went through a period where, well, we're still kind of in it, we're still coming out of it, but where it was prohibited or children were removed from the home through, whatever means. But the beginning of the boarding schools, the mission schools, the orphanages that after epidemics for many indigenous people turned up, and now through acts of, through war action, through military action, creating orphans. But childhood health became less just a regular part of living, and treating earaches, understanding that there could be new conditions you lived in as housing changed, and from whatever the traditional housing was, that was very, if you want to say, clean air, because there was housing structures, whether it's the lodge, like for my people, or maybe the earth lodge, or the birch bark, or whatever the living space was, if you want to say, 100% organic. And so hearing, once you arrived on earth, became really, it changed. I'm going to take my little cup of water. And then there's the arrival of, because some of it is kind of funny. Some kids may think that maybe when they're adults and they move away from home, maybe to them what is hearing associated with fond memories of home would be the thud of the dryer. But there was a time in Indian country before the electric or gas dryer. It was the wind. And even that, if there were clothes on the line, or if there was maybe the way to clean and keep hides, or the organic furs, all the different types of clothing over time, the dryer is a new sound to associate with childhood, or independence, or maybe you can actually afford a dryer now, or you go to the laundromat, and you hear the dryer. That's like a new sound in Indian country. But sometimes when I hear a dryer, it kind of reminds me, especially if there's clothes in there, you kind of have that circular, and then there's a thud, or and you can actually begin to hear, if your hearing is, able, if you have all those access to all those sounds and stuff, you actually can start hearing when the moisture and the air changes internally. And that's a lot, like once you arrive on Earth and you start, especially now, all the changes that come to us, that's a part of existence. And the emotions with that are different for everybody. But to learn about where you are at right now and to practice your being in the moment, really being there, like with your whole self, your whole breath, your whole body. If you spend some time outside, now not while you're driving with the window down, I'm just going to say that, but let's say you spend some time outside and you start hearing and listening to sounds. Maybe if you live in the city, your hearing you'll have to like engage your brain and really focus on one thing. But to spend some time outside and where you're comfortable and it feels safe, or, sometimes people have trust issues. So you got to keep one eye open, maybe you don't live in that safe space, but you can stick your head out the window. But to work on using that gift to hear the earth and its movements. So all morning, what I have listened to is a billowing, consistent wind rhythm. And it's different at this time of year. This winter has been, this is how, from my storyteller mind, this is what I call the big in winter, because we had innumerable back large windstorms, or sometimes it was a crystal clear day. But when it's 75 miles an hour, or which is about, I think, 110, 120 in kilometers per hour, when it's that strong, it sounds different. And it makes everything sound. And you can actually start hearing when the moisture from the air is changing because of the sound of the wind. That volume gets turned up really loud. And that can be a very grounding teaching for yourself that you can do anywhere at any time. And if you live someplace, because there are a couple places on Earth where they don't have any wind, or there's zero wind at some times of the year, they're just there with humidity or lack of humidity. They're just there. That air is just there, and that has a different sound to it. So if I would say, when there's so much in wellness now, if you like, use Sister Google and Google wellness, you're going to come up with, I don't know how many hits now, because it's become, or it's starting to become in some circles, a consumer item. But you hear my little dog, so I have to make sure. I'll be back just 1 second. Not a second. Thank you for that kind of understanding. So hopefully I'll probably have to get back up and let her back in. But for right now, it's for us a warm day. I believe it's in the mid 40s, and the wind hasn't lowered the temperature that much. But one of the things that I wanted to share today sort of is that practice that you can do anywhere to take a pause, to reground yourself, to get in the moment. Maybe the tempo of your life right now, particularly if you work in this medium, or maybe there's so many things going around in your life, uh, and that require you not to have those pauses that you had like during the workday. There are a lot of places that prior to the pandemic, you got a lunch break, you got 2 breaks, really to take care of yourself or to have a pause and change the tempo of your workday so that it's kind of like recognizing that human needs um, and labor go together, that you're a human being. And then in that workspace, you do need those pauses to eat, to drink water, to go to the restroom. Those are historical things that the generations now enjoy. And it wasn't always true. It wasn't always true in many societies in the last 150 years. So those are really like pauses that even in a workday should be honored in this nano digital age. And if they're not, maybe the requirement is that you don't have a lunch break anymore. You get to eat in front of other people on the camera, or you have 2 minutes to do what was given to you in a longer period of time in recognition that you're a human being. So those tempos, you have to do what you have to do sometimes. And so those little recentering like tools in your wellness toolbox, merely closing your eyes, or if it's not appropriate, like if you have to, right, if I close my eyes, that changes even how I appear. But to really help yourself by simply asking yourself, what do I hear? You don't have to understand it, but it regrounds you to the place you're at. And what I hear right now is my little dog needs to be let in. And I live by nesting raptors. So she is little, and so I need to let her back in. And if even my dog has become electronically toggled, because she has a whole set of new behaviors that have come with this digital age. And so in wellness, sometimes if people have lost their sense of hearing, they develop other techniques to engaging with the world. There's many languages, and those languages are influenced by spoken language. And for indigenous people, prior to like an established language, there was a common sign language understood by many nations, and even understood to the point where you could identify yourself as a certain tribe. So we began to, like, in wellness, that's also kind of, you start to, even you hear, but there's movements that people learn. Or if I go like this, peace sign, or okay, or and then some of the other, right? Sometimes people, the use of merely of their hands tells us, like, can tell a story. you know, and there are many ways culturally that people use their hands. The use of the index finger or telling an origin story, but using this finger, not that it's a bad, no fingers are bad, because it's preferable you keep what you're born with, you know, whatever that is, even if it means that you weren't, maybe you know, I mean, whatever you, that you keep your fingers. But there's teachings in all cultures about the use of the hand. But at first, you just got to move it. So in wellness, like a technique to stay in the moment is to use your hands, is to merely, they're off screen, you know, you help yourself by just running through little brain exercises where you are really working on a way to stay intact. You're to work on your wellness. And those little like toolkits, like tools in the wellness toolkit, are really important during this time. I there's now a lot of studies, you know, on the tapping of the knees. But I know many older people, and now if their grandchildren had been raised by that generation, they learned to do this. And some generations call this twiddling your thumbs, but they also learned to do this to wait. And they were taught that outside of the home, because often they had to, you know, right, when you start moving away from the home life, you're socialized into another box. Sometimes it's a school box, work box. And they were taught, they learned a technique of how to stay in the moment because they're children, but how to wait. And some of them have great patience. And I grew up with, and I still hear it now, when I go somewhere where there's a large group of Sitsuke Tapis, or you know, people that belong to the confederacy that I do, you will hear people waiting, but they're engaging and remaining aware, which is part of wellness, is to be in the moment and engage with the world you're in a good way. And so I will hear people sometimes, you know, going, shh, 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 shh. And it almost reminds me that it's that wind sound that is, there's so much knowledge about the wind and the spiritual connection to the wind, because wind in of itself has power. And so even in those waiting moments, it's like those sounds that you're hearing when you arrive here, they become part of those tools when you are trying to stay engaged with the world. But also I hear people singing all the time, you know, or they're humming, or they'll be drumming, drumming and humming, and, you know, but they are engaged. They're staying in the moment for the purpose they came there. And in wellness, there's a lot of techniques that work for some people, and some people try them, but you can find what works for you. There is some ways that, like, I work on my vocabulary, or in my memory, is how people that are, you know, my family members, but other people, older people that I've heard speak, I heard the way they used their throat and sound. And so when I'm re-grasping that, that sound, because sound is continuous, right? So you regrasp that. And so some of the ways that I work on that is I sing it. So like there's a word, like pretty much if you ever meet someone from the Blackfoot Confederacy, you're going to hear them at some point, or if you come to our community, you're going to hear, Sukapi or Sukapi. And so there's all kinds of ways to say it. But you as Sukapi is its own rhythm. And when you sing or when you play with those sounds of a word, and it results in what people call a sound, or you play with, the ability to speak, it sounds, you start integrating it in a way that relaxes you. It doesn't, because part of like the intergenerational stuff that we carry, and just like to call it stuff, because stuff can be organized, it can be left. Though stuff that doesn't belong to you can return it to the owners, through processes of wellness and stuff, or you can give it. You don't want to pass it on, So some stuff goes where it needs to be, so it doesn't harm other people. But through singing or through using the sound of a word, so like Sugapi, if you start, or I would start, if I start saying it, Sugapi, 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 Sugapi. And you can start, the other part of wellness is integrating those feelings you have, that maybe you received the message from somebody, doesn't matter, family, friend, or foe, to not talk, to it wasn't safe maybe to feel, and you were made to see something. So even like in a healing way, one word, Sugabi, you can put that in expression, but that word means good, or really that's filling me with goodness. I feel I'm feeling good. It's making everything good. Because just like in indigenous cultures, like we're not bits and parts, we're a whole experience. And, like I hear some people say, that, they're too much. And I just think I've never met an indigenous person that's too much, because that's part of our beauty. We have that ability to integrate everything in a moment. But when it's interrupted by something that you want to, a popular English phrase, and even I wore my shirt, healing is a verb, that you can, through techniques that you have ownership over, because they're your way, they're your toolkit, just like your path in life. That after you arrived here, it's your path. It involves others many times, but sometimes those others are not on that path. And it's okay to develop tools to help you have those moments of clarity, to be in the moment with your own wellness journey. And when you're in a community and you're in a community wellness journey, like ceremony, gatherings, feeds, powwows, all the good stuff, basketball tournaments, whether you're a fan or, but all those things where we could gather, body heat to body heat, prior or coming back And so today, rather than say we're in a period of resocializing, but we are, and to really honor that experience that you have been through, where we've had to, for our own safety, some of our communities are, we behave one way, we leave the reservation and they're behaving another way. And then we get information from maybe like, an international health organization that their message is counter to the message that you may be hearing from, the geopolitical public health body that governs your territories now, right? And so how do you re-socialize and not be impatient if things aren't running at the nano speed of the online world or the streaming service? Because we're human beings. It's almost like we're coming into a period where you can decide, how am I going to be patient with people? Because we're flexing our gathering muscles again. And some of them have been a little stiff maybe, or weak, but really there's a lot of techniques in wellness to say, what is the rhythm of my experience now? And if you feel those feelings coming up, those frustrating feelings, or maybe impatient, or, something you looked forward to and at the last minute, that COVID took it away from you. And so then you have to go back with all your goods you got together, maybe your new clothes you've been saving, or whatever. But really those techniques to say, I'm going to take a breath. And that's also like, hearing, making sound, helping yourself, coaching yourself with those good words, that good dialogue during this time that we're entering back of resocializing. And then there are some people that they're like, the Indian relay races at the start line. They're like, they need one or two, holders to hold them back because they're ready to go out, So you also like want to be mindful that you're going to meet a lot of people that want to just socialize. They just want to look at other Indians again, in real life. And they want to, I don't know, smell the grease wafting over the powwow grounds. I mean, whatever's your thing. Or maybe they're so looking forward to going with a group of people to collect sweetgrass, to sit on the earth again in a group where you're collectively going out and gathering, or berry picking, or hiking, just walking on the land again. And to be mindful that we are all gathering again. And so there were some there's a lot of First Nations folks that share online archival pictures of our ancestors. And when we chose to be at events and they came there, when you looked at people, no matter their condition they were in, they put their best forward. They took care of themselves. And that is also something to, in wellness, sometimes it's real basic. You're just, trying all my clothing. I am fully clothed. And I thought, this is the Native Wellness Power Hour, and I have this. It's getting a little worn because of all the power hours I guess I've done, and I've had to wash this t-shirt, but it's getting a little worn. But this is, I said, I like these sayings because in my own wellness journey and some of the mentors that helped me during different times, there'd be little slogans, or if I read a book on healing or, heard a lecture, there'd be one or two things that I wanted to help myself remember. So I would come up with little sayings or, uh, like, kind of like don't pass on anger. Anger and violence are two different things. They are two different things. So if you feel angry, there's ways to express it or to acknowledge it and then put yourself not in a timeout, but a pause technique. And there was a period when I had dealt with a lot of folks, and I had to be the recipient of just witnessing, because I had a task, and so I had to stay on that task and just witnessing their behavior. Was good, bad, the whole, um, it was everything. It was like, if we're ever really captured on film, those would be like the blockbusters of the galaxy because of the dynamic lives that exist in all our communities. We're living. That's how I'll say it. And but I had in being that kind of where I had to stay on task and then the witness to all of this, it wore on me. So um, a traditional, what some people call like a traditional healer, is a person. One of the things he helped me with, the instructions he helped me with that I've used, this is kind of like my best practice, my Indian practice, but it's also my mature practice to cue myself, is that he said this: it's easy to be angry. Pray for understanding. He didn't say, so pray for understanding. Those were two separate things. It's easy to be angry and pray for understanding. And because sometimes anger is also a self-preservation cue that we've been gifted, and the whole spectrum of feelings and emotions. But what you do with those, the action you take. So that's what often I tell myself, like when I see that or I feel that building in me, or I feel myself maybe wanting to move too fast, uh, thinking about taking action on that, I remember that. That's my self coaching. So in wellness, that's been a really important part, that to understand that those are two. I'm not saying don't feel that anger, because it has its functions, especially like if people are able finally in a safe place to, or they're a safe part of their life and they're able to really tell somebody for the first time what happened to them, maybe an injury or something that was hurtful, how they did it, how they were excluded, or whatever it is. And you have all those feelings. All feelings are equal and emotions are equal. It's what you do with them. So that anger, it is easy to be angry. And you could see the result when when it's mixed with other things. So, but to understand, sometimes that's also starts with yourself. That might not be your core personality. You might be a kind, gentle, person. That's how you were made. That's your path. You're the reminder of kindness, generosity, and and if you had to take on someone else's anger, or it was passed on intergenerationally, you can leave it. You can go through it. You can develop a different way. So I that's also part of the toolkit that in my life that I have. And in my experiences in the wellness movement, is anger and the violence that came to our communities and became a norm. And now we have, you even have like a lot of terms, right, for violence, lateral violence, primary violence, then you get kind of like you're devoting a lot of time to the vocabulary of violence. But anger and the intergenerational experience and violence sometimes we're like this. And then when it isn't safe to express it, it gets put somewhere else. It gets carried. So in that process in wellness, when you are learning to set it aside, or it's not that you're going to stop feeling angry, because it does have a function. That's usually when something is a no-no. It could be against you. It could be a maturing thing, maybe. I was reminded, I was watching the show, and I can't remember, but they kept using winner, loser, winner, loser, winner, loser, winner, loser. And so, like when I was playing sports, one of the things for sportsmanship was that you had to find a way not to be a sore loser. And I was like, I thought like mean like a sore, like a sore. When I first heard that as a kid, I was like, a sore? Am I going to like get sores? Or but that was an age appropriate thought. And so it's important, or one of the things I've felt and experienced is that it's important to really give voice to and description and vocabulary, and to acknowledge anger, not to be afraid, that it's a normal part of it's a human response. So it's part of the human toolkit, the emotional response toolkit. But conflict and anger and violence are like, just like all the teachings about the strength of, braided hair, or maybe the number 3, or talking about bringing strands of medicine together to make the medicine power bigger, to share, and or even like there's circumstances to talk about in wellness, those to unbraiding those 3 things, because they're actually separate: anger, conflict, violence. And we can, as people and living generation, our ancestors, the teachings, the core teachings of our cultures, our understanding of the galaxy, our astronomical intelligence, the story of the Milky Way or the Wolf Road, those are about living together. I just felt last night that somebody arrived through this medium to give me a gift when people were talking about how we learned acknowledging that we were helped by the movement of the wolves, the wolf pack, so that we learned how to cooperatively create that movement to feed our people through our uh, through our taking of the buffalo. the buffalo's life in that ceremony, because hunting, much like everything else, was ceremonial. There was a teaching, there was an energy and a spirit, because we're going to feed the people. And there's also an acknowledgement. We learned from other beings, other living beings, because we had to be taught that. And just to think of that beauty, that the circle is related, to the wolves and to the teachings of, the wolf road, or to the teachings of the children or the orphans, people who children to find safety went to the sky, and how that's represented in keeping the home. So that there's just so many beautiful things when you start to talk about, speak again about those three things and untangling them: anger, conflict, and violence. And then this is a really critical one, I think, and we started late, but we're going to end on time. And I could say a whole thing about that daylight saving time. It's like, if you're saving daylight, where are you keeping it? I mean, there's a lot of jokes in there that could be had right now. But seeing and wellness. I heard somebody in a documentary describe that they had chosen another way of, or they didn't really have a choice. They were born into a way of life, and they said, I didn't have other role models. I didn't have the role models, or they were taken away from the role models. Like the role models, the boarding school created a division of role models, prohibited role models. And you can see that as a legacy in some workplaces currently, in all over, and so there's a way when you see things and in wellness, that even that is related back to all those other tools, because you could see something repetitively. That's about like the intergenerational injury or trauma or whatever you want to call it. It's modern day also. You see it repetitively, and so then your vision sometimes needs to be healed, just like everything else, or recentered, to see a whole. And in wellness, there are a lot of techniques, and that's what being creative is about coloring, about drawing, about getting a piece of chalk, uh, getting, a bunch of empty TP rolls and making a structure, learning to cut patterns, to fold. How do you make a rope? How do you braid a rope? How do you bead? Because you are healing or recentering that seeing also, so that you can move forward, right? Move forward in a good way. You can be in the moment in a good way. You could have that good talk and re-nurture yourself back along your path. So seeing is really incredibly important, and not just the eye test, AEO, and then, you might have to go, or, maybe you lost your glasses, but you need them, and you've been going, like reading an eye chart. There is that too, to check your vision, to tend to that physical part, but really also to practice seeing something. And because all of us come from cultures or seeing was incredibly important. It was a high gift that everybody possessed. To track the movement, to know that when you see, like I live on the Eastern Rocky Mountain front, and so I learn from other people. When I see the snow wisp on certain mountains or in certain part of the range, the Rocky Mountain range, or the mountains near our home, then I know I have so many minutes, particularly in the winter, to get home. So I have to see the whole, because it announces things, everything, the movement of leaves. If you watch a leaf over time, when they start appearing, when does a leaf first leave? You're retraining your whole self, your vision, you're improving your vision. And there's also really those opportunities that we have all now to gather again. When you see that gathering that maybe you haven't been able to be a part of for 2 years in person, when you see that family member, when you see that friend or that new friend, or maybe your dream trip has been delayed, or maybe you are really just enjoying that you are home where you're at and seeing the emergence of spring. That's where I'm at, and to see the emergence of spring, looking for the first green grass. That's your toolkit also in wellness, to begin to see the movement around you of the whole picture. Because really, that is also a sense of belonging. We belong to the whole picture that's happening now, to the whole picture on life, to the whole picture of the human family and all our connections. We see that. And then there is the other type of seeing where some people are, that is their path and their gift in life, to have that ability to see beyond this a shared reality. They see beyond that. And in our communities, those people that were gifted that way, and all of us have that ability because we all dream. So seeing in your dream is just was valued as a waking moment, understanding, because we're connected in a different way when we're dreaming. So understanding and wellness, all of those, the hearing, the seeing, the moving, the talking, all of those have a place in wellness and in your own journey. And so today, I have just been very happy to be here and to share this time with you, and that please join the Native Wellness Institute next Wednesday. And for this tempo of it, that Wednesday is the power hour for Native wellness. And then also you can see it later on the other different parts, the different social media platforms, or just listen to it. So may your day, wherever you're at, be a beautiful sound day. And may you create that beautiful sound if you need a pause. So I wish you wellness. I wish you well. And I look forward to seeing all of you in real life. And just come up to me if I see you, because if I see somebody that I always just see on social media, I'm going to say, "Ooh, I followed you." Not in a stalking way or a snagging way, just, "Ooh, I followed you." So as we get ready to witness each other in the flesh and blood, I wish you a happy spring, and I look forward to the next time that we could be together again. Thank you.